So put your hands together and join me in welcome Rokelle to the table.
So, thank you for all the wonderful introductions. But there were only two. Where's the third? I wrote a book on narcissism, so when you say 3 introductions, I expect 3 introductions. Never mind. So, I just have to say that this conference keeps getting better and better and better. That I cannot believe, I was back at uACAAD. I've been here at this conference over the years, and I just have to acknowledge again, Sam and Christoph and Caddy and Matt and the foundation and all the people that put this together. I do conferences all over, and this is top drawer. This is really ace. So thank you for making my job easy and the rest of the presenters. I want to acknowledge you. And everybody's having a good time so far, enlightening, all that. I also want to thank Crossroads for sponsoring me. I've been there, I think it's 4 years, going on 4 years now? I think so. I believe at my age that it's just not worth working at a place that you don't believe in, a place that doesn't inspire you. And Crossroads is a place, it's a little jewel in the Caribbean. Really fine program and alcoholism, addiction, trauma, and it does have a combination of clinical excellence and compassion. So thank you, Crossroads, for sponsoring me at this workshop. And I want to start. I want to start by telling you reading you a poem. It's on this lecture on shame. I'm going to also invite you to keep breathing, especially if folks here where shame is an issue. Keep breathing, don't hold your breath, and I'll remind you of that throughout. And believe it or not, I even hope to have a little bit of fun in this workshop. Not too much, because it is shame after all, but a little bit of fun. There's a poem by Jean-Jacques Rousseau that goes, "Nature wants children to be children before they are grown. And if we deliberately depart from this order, we will get premature fruits, which are neither well-flavored and which soon decay. We shall have youthful sages and grown-up children. Childhood has ways of seeing, of thinking, of feeling peculiar to itself, and nothing can be more foolish than to substitute our ways for theirs." Erik Erikson, the developmental theorist, says that the greatest sin of all is the mutilation of a child's spirit. And my goal today really is to address the issue of shame and the integration of attachment, something called polyvagal theory and internal family systems in your work on shame. Now, how many here are clinicians, addiction counselors, psychologists? Raise your hand. Yeah. And how many here are interested folks? Well, hopefully you all are, but how many of you interested folks that just decided to come to learn more about shame? And okay, how many in the healthcare profession here? Do we have any teachers? Cool. All right. I know I'm missing some professions, but I always like to ask, how many here are parents? How many of you? Okay. Keep breathing. And how many here had parents? Just check that. I always check this in. Okay. So, what we know in shame is that there are 3 conditions. 3 conditions that erode the soul. And those 3 conditions are betrayal, indifference, and self-loathing. These are the 3 conditions that have people walking around like the procession of the living dead. And, shame is such a powerful emotion, isn't it? It's so powerful. It's got a mental component, emotional component, spiritual, physical. But what it does, it causes us to sever relationships. It causes us to sink into depression. It fuels addictions. It's at the root of compulsive behavior and narcissism. Very powerful emotion. And, you know, gradually, with people who were raised with shame or have trauma and shame connected to trauma, gradually, you know, despair begins to sit where your soul used to be. When you're not able to talk about it, release it, unpack it. And, you know, especially in the United States, I'm not mentioning any names of political people, but particularly in the United States, shame seems to thrive right now, especially, but you know, especially in the business world. And let me show you this cartoon. This says, "You'll fit in perfectly. Our corporate culture is entirely shame-based." And some people that I've talked to through the years have even left their religious institutions because of shame. You know, I've heard the term recovering Catholics one too many times, but they're recovering Jews, recovering of any, and I found this. This says, a church that is into public shaming. This says, a guy holding a sign fell asleep and wet the pew. But personally, I think the hardest shame of all is called parent shame, for me, parent shame. It's you know, none of us are perfect parents, none of us have perfect parents, but when you're raising kids, if you have raised kids at my age and stage, you look back on some of the things you could have done better. This is a cartoon, and you know, I'm so tired of the literature. They're always blaming mothers. God, that irritates me. Here's a cartoon that says, if it's not one thing, it's your mother. I left my kids sleep in bed with me. I bottle fed my daughter. I work a full-time job and like it. I bribe my kids to do chores. I mean, it's Freud's hidden book. But it is, what I'd like to address with you, first of all, is the difference between shame and guilt. How many know that difference? How many know it? Right. So there's a lot of people that know this, but shame, you know, what does guilt mean? Guilt means what? It's a healthy conscience. It means we went against our values, or we went against our integrity. Shame is, I am a mistake. That in some fashion, if you really get to see who I am, you will believe I'm rotten to the core. Guilt is repairable. Guilt is repairable. You know, shame is much more deeply wired than guilt. There can be toxic guilt. I mean, so people sometimes who have been through disasters, like in Crossroads, you know, people went through hurricanes. Barbuda was destroyed, the island of Barbuda. There's sometimes survivor's guilt. You know, I made it, why didn't my friends and family make it? That's different. But when we're talking about shame, it often occurs in childhood. It often occurs in childhood. And I don't want anyone to forget that there's such a thing as healthy shame. How many know about that, healthy shame? Yeah, healthy shame. You know, Sylvan Tompkins introduced the notion. So, you know, healthy shame is like a feeling of humility. Healthy shame can be embarrassment. Actually, we have much more of a problem with shamelessness. We need a touch of shame. It keeps us from going to the grocery store nude. Keeps us socialized. And, you know, by the way, isn't it wonderful to see children, when you witness children who have a strong sense of self, even little ones. You know, I see it, it's so interesting. I was in an Easter service. I was at a Catholic Easter service, and there was a little boy in front of me who was, he must have been about 5 years old. And, you know, the homily was being given, the priest was trying to talk, and this boy was non-stoppable. You know, talking and hitting and, you know, talking very loudly, actually. And his father, I saw this, his father grabbed him, flung him over his shoulders, and started walking out of the church. And as he was walking out of the church, that little boy yelled to the congregation, "Hey guys, pray for me." That's a healthy sense of self. Isn't that marvelous? I thought, there is a God, there is healthy parenting. I loved it. You know, his sister was trying to shame him. And said, "You see those guys at the back of the church?" "Yeah, I see them." "Well, she called them hushers, not ushers. Hushers. But the truth is, folks, we all have hushers. We all have people who dampen our spirit internally. We all have that because none of us had perfect parenting. And of course, you know, then there is debilitating shame. Debilitating shame. And debilitating shame is really a wound of not belonging. It's a wound of not belonging. It's a deep sense, of course, of unlovability. And the catch-22, it's a deep sense that I'm unlovable with a deep longing to be connected to other people. And it's, you know, it's a combination of beliefs and physical responses. And when I say wound of not belonging, shame is most importantly a felt sense of unworthiness to be in connection. An ongoing awareness of how very much one wants to connect with others and doesn't know how or can't do it. So shame is really a reaction of beliefs and physical responses. Beliefs and physical responses. And there's a certain worldview, and the worldview has to do with, first, of control. I must be perfectly in control of myself and others around me. Because losing control will show how defective I am, and that is absolutely intolerable. So I have to keep a tight grip, both on myself and my loved ones. Without my rules and rituals, I can't control the outcome. And by the way, if catastrophe happens, it just means I'm being punished. Control. The other worldview is one of perfection. I must avoid making mistakes at all costs, even if I choke the life out of myself and the people around me, because to make a mistake is deadly and shows how rotten I am. I can't take the chance of being imperfect, because basically when you're a perfectionist, you give up on being human. You have to constrict yourself and the people around you. Now, how many identify with perfectionism in here, or in touch with it? You know, there's a difference between perfection and excellence. And that difference is that excellence tolerates mistakes. Perfection tolerates none. And so when we talk about shame, there are certain, I'm going to give you the bad news first before the good news. So just keep breathing, that would be great. I want to talk about shame binds. Many of us have clients that just can't connect to their emotions. They can't connect to their bodies. That if one was shamed for their emotions, of course, wipe that smile off your face. You want to cry, I'll give you something to cry about. And that was done over and over again. What happens is that as you grow, your range of emotions become very, very small. Instead of playing on an 88-piano keyboard with emotions that can go up and down, hopefully not manically, you wind up playing on 3 safe notes. I'm fine, everything's fine. It's that dorsal shutdown, we call it. Your range of emotions become very small. So when sadness comes up, it gets bound up with shame, and you don't feel the sadness anymore. What you feel is shame. Same with anger. Same with joy. Some of us got shamed for feeling too much happiness or joy. The other shame bind is a need shame bind. You know, how many times can you ask for your needs to be met, or assume your needs will be met when you're a child, and get pushed away before you consider your own needs to be loathsome and disgusting? So what you wind up doing is you just start disowning certain needs. We all have the need to be touched, the need to be fed, the need for attention, the need to be sexual. You wind up throwing those needs in the garbage. However, it's like the joke about the drowning codependent who sees somebody else's life before his eyes. You're very acutely aware of other people's needs, but you can't go there. And there are common strategies for dealing with shame. Everybody take a deep breath. There you go. There are common strategies for dealing with shame. And they are the following. There are many strategies, but one is called projection. Projection. And when you can't tolerate your own needs, you do a couple things. You put your needs on other people. Like a therapist friend of mine who was touch-starved, who at the end of sessions used to go up to her clients and go, "Well, you look sad, you need a hug." Who needs a hug? Continually putting that need on other people. The people who are particularly good at projection or projective identification are narcissists. Narcissists who need to expunge their shame, so they cast it off on the people closest to them. And it comes in the form of rage, demanding, entitlement. That's projection. And the other way that we do this, impression management, termed by Irving Seligman. Impression management means you spend your life trying to manage the impressions that others have of you. So basically you are on stage doing a performance. In treatment, in therapy, the consistent invitation is to get off the stage, to close the curtain on that unseen audience. Because we know to do a performance, you live a life of complete loneliness. And it's exhausting. The other way that we manage shame is called inner dialogue. Inner dialogue, sometimes it's a disorder. Anybody familiar with the committee? Excuse my French, the itty bitty shitty committee it's called, that comments on your performance during the day. That inner group, I wrote affirmation books. And the reason why is that I had so much inner dialogue, I could be holding groups by myself in my car. And I joke about it now, but it was absolutely paralyzing. Paralyzing. And one day I remember when I was teaching high school, which is enough to put anybody in a shame prison, my compulsive behavior was busyness in order to avoid the shame. We all develop something. I had to be busy all day, everything had to be planned down to the wire. And one day, I had no place to go and nothing to do. And I got in my car, and I remember the voices started playing, saying things that were absolutely nasty. And what they were really, they were interjects from my past. They were just these neurons, just firing and playing. Things like, "Rokelle, you'll always be alone. Nobody ever wants to be with you. You're going to be alone the rest of your life." To the point where I was paralyzed. I had to move to the side of the road and on the Cincinnati freeway, and just started crying. That's when I finally I had made a bond with a therapist there. And she had suggested self-talk. She suggested all these things, but finally that's what I started to do. I made myself look in the mirror and tell myself, I will be with me. I will always be with me, and I will never abandon myself again, because that's exactly what I had done. We treat ourselves the way we were treated. And so, I abandoned the self, not worth being with. And as a result of that, that kind of affirmation helped, and I wrote books. Affirmation is not putting frosting on a rotten cake, by the way. It's not telling yourself something over and over and over. There's a process to it. And perhaps I can talk about that later. So there are two aspects in dealing with shame, in the shame spiral. And one aspect, as I mentioned in my introduction, is repairing attachment. And how do we do that? And the other is dealing with some of our core beliefs. The most important thing for us to note is that shame doesn't happen in a vacuum, does it? It doesn't. So shame is a wound of attachment dysregulation. And what is attachment? Well, attachment is how we connect and bond with caregivers and learn to trust, and we learn to love through our primary attachments. Mary Ainsworth, an attachment specialist at Berkeley, used to say that the only thing more important than attachment is oxygen. That the quality of our attachment determines our identity or lack of. It determines who we choose to be with in relationship. It even determines who and what we choose to do as a profession. But shame occurs when our basic expectations of someone we love is exposed as bad or wrong. It's a severing of an interpersonal bridge. So when little Johnny runs to Dad at the end of the day, and Dad happens to be a workaholic, just not a very happy person, and Johnny, "Hi, Dad," and Dad continually pushes him off, saying, "You are so needy. You do this to me every damn night. Why don't you go bother somebody else? Leave me alone. Don't touch me." So if this happens continually, well, Johnny's autonomic nervous system will develop patterns of shutdown. And either what Johnny will do, he'll either deny his needs, or he'll be so anxious in personal relationships, and this nervous system of his gets compromised. It gets compromised. And he'll add shame on top of the shame, meta-shame, that he already feels about his loneliness and his lack of ability to get close to people. You know, a child learns. Well, let me give you another example. But some caregivers respond with more of a confusing, or I would call it ambivalent, way of attaching. Intermittent attachment, you know, when I talk about intermittent attachment with the primary caregiver, it's being in a family where you'll get love and attention maybe every third Thursday when the moon is full, or when the birds fly south, and you'll never know when that's going to happen. That kind of anxiety is palpable. Addicted families, chronically ill families, mentally ill families, you know, it's confusing. What happens in those families is a child learns that if connection is going to happen, he's got or she's got to give up on her own cues, and he's got to watch his parents very, very carefully. And this means that his own spontaneous need either has to be muted or it has to disappear. Because you have to focus very carefully on who's available, when they're available, and stop paying attention. Stop paying attention to your body. You know, this attachment is more twisted than it is broken. But it does lead to chronic shame. And as we grow, that attachment will look like codependency. It'll look like accommodation. That when somebody does give you attention, you feel terrific. Your self-esteem bounces up and down depending on if you can make somebody pay attention to you and love you. So it's a long, hard road, you know. And because a young child must believe that somebody loves them, to survive, a little boy or girl has to believe that they are loved, no matter what the circumstances. When you are raised in that kind of a traumatic family, that child will blame themselves. They'll blame themselves in order to keep the illusion alive. Because to believe, you know, rather than risk the devastation that nobody loves me in here, you must keep that illusion alive, that I'm loved. So, you know, if I knew what causes addiction, I'd probably be in Oslo winning the Nobel Prize. Nobody quite knows, but we're finding out more and more. But I can tell you, and the clinicians in here will probably agree, that the freeway to the valley of addiction is traumatic attachments, dysregulated and traumatic attachments in childhood. I think that Sam Keen, who I love to quote, who's a poet. Anybody know Sam Keen? Yeah, he's great. Sam Keen says it best when he says, to the degree that we are not held and bonded, we will find something to hold on to. Some substitute for that holding we did not get. The nature of addiction is all in the way that we hold on, that we grasp in order to make up for the ways in which we were not held. When one feels empty inside, hungry to feel a part of someone, desperate to be held close, craving to be loved, that longing turns to shame. And so one uses more to anesthetize the longing. At crossroads, I'm sure in the people, in the places you work, we see this all the time, the loneliness, the disconnection. And, often it happens even before the addiction started. So, this is a thing that chronically shamed people have in common. They lead a profoundly lonely existence. When I was at Crossroads the last time, there was a client there, I'll make up a name, Dave. And Dave was one of those guys, very affable, very gregarious, had a ton of connections. You wanted to have him in group because he would just make everybody feel good and connected. And yet he would meet with his therapist privately and talk about how lonely he was. Why is that? Well, he was lonely not because there were no people in his life. He was lonely because his relationships were inauthentic. He was doing a performance. He kept himself out of connection. He kept himself safe. So he could go and he could rally, but people did not know the soul of who this guy was because he kept it apart. He kept it secret because he was too ashamed to show. How many are familiar with that scenario? People who, yeah. And so what we can do, we can show you. They may seem to be present, but we can show them how to do connection differently. And I hope to show you some ways to do that. But you can't leave the trap till you know you're in it. You can't. I'm going to take off my watch, but that's all I'll take off, I promise. You can't leave the trap till you know you're in it. So I want to point out to you what's called the Shame Compass by Nathanson, because there are 4 basic reactions to shame. And the first reaction that I'll talk about is the parasympathetic reaction, is withdraw. The second is avoid. Now the difference is, withdraw means isolation. It means going into hiding. Avoid is avoiding through alcohol, drugs, other behaviors. Those are parasympathetic responses. The other, of course, the third reaction is that you attack other people. Or, of course, you attack yourself. That's the compass. And when you deal with people with that kind of shame, they often fall on one of these labels, and sometimes more than one. But when shame is activated, I'll tell you, somebody is always punished. It's either going to be the self or someone in connection. Somebody will always be punished. One takes their vengeance out either internally or externally. And the attachment guru named Louis Cozolino says, vengeance is a lazy form of grief, and I believe that. Vengeance, a lazy form of grief. That under the rage, under the shame, you show me somebody who's rageful and angry, I'll show you somebody who's got unresolved grief. So acknowledging the grief to another person, being able, once somebody is sober, to really peel away that veneer and get them to feel safe in the environment. That's when you start processing the grief. Does this make sense to you? Okay. So These shame reactions are triggered by our nervous system. And I want to just turn our attention to one fabulous theory called the polyvagal theory. How many are familiar with the polyvagal theory? Polyvagal theory by Stephen Porges. It gives clients a look, when you explain it, about why they attack themselves, why they attack other people, what's going on in their nervous system. And Stephen Porges recognized that our bodies are in constant search for one thing, and that's called equilibrium. I love this quote at the top. Our bodies know they belong to life. It's our minds that make us homeless. I think that's true with some of our beliefs, right? So everybody take a deep breath again. Are you having fun yet? Probably not, but hopefully we'll liven it up in a minute. The nerve that dictates our equilibrium. Do you know the nerve that dictates our equilibrium? The vagus nerve. And the term vagus comes from the Latin root to wander or far-reaching. It is the longest nerve in the body. And let me just show you this picture. You won't be able to see it very well back there. It encompasses the parasympathetic, the sympathetic nervous system. It controls not just our heart rate, our breathing, our digestion, but it controls our facial expression, our tone of voice. It controls our middle ear, our social gesturing. And so it's not only controlling all these organs, but I want to show you another slide unless I need to leave this on. Can I change it? Okay. The remarkable vagus nerve. What's fascinating to me is that the neural control of our heart is linked to the neural control of the muscles in our face. I thought that was fascinating. So literally, we wear our hearts on our face. And that when we change the expression of our eyes and our face, we can begin to regulate our heartbeat. And since regulating the nervous system, it's co-regulation. The most effective, I mean, you can't heal shame by climbing Mount Everest and meditating your way into glory. It really takes work with another human being and developing that trust. And so our heart rate, the inner smile meditation, the body scan, although we have to be careful with the body scan. Some people, trauma survivors can't tolerate. You know about the body scan, Takana? So if they can't, just focus on the arms and the hands then. Something where they start to get a felt sense of their bodies. And, you know, we used to think that there were two systems in place for our nervous system. Let me switch this for a minute. We used to think that there was the parasympathetic, which is the brakes. And let me go down here. This is the most ancient of our, there we go. This is the parasympathetic nervous system. It helps to immobilize us. It's more primitive because it takes us into shutdown, collapse, dissociation, and do you know how important this is? Absolutely life-saving. But people who don't understand this can get very shamed about their reactions. I worked with a woman, actually she's an alum, and she happens to live in Minneapolis. And we worked together. And finally she came to terms with the fact that she was raped. She was raped. She told her daughter about this and what happened to her, and that how she was completely paralyzed. She let this happen, and her daughter absolutely lambasted her. How could you not fight? What is the matter with you? Why couldn't you get up and do something or fight back? Well, she couldn't. The life-saving mechanism in her body kept her alive. That's the parasympathetic. And, you know, when clients understand that the courage really it takes to identify this is what happened to me is the first step. The other step is I didn't control that. This is an ancient nervous system response. That's the dorsal vagal or the parasympathetic. So then we have the sympathetic nervous system, which is mobilized and fight or flight. And this is the gas. It's activated when? When is it activated? Anybody know? Danger, sure. When we experience uneasiness, when something triggers us so that we want to get out of there or fight. But some people get stuck right here or right there. They either get stuck in shutdown or they get stuck in panic and terror and anxiety. And actually, I want to tell you, and this is research done by Peter Levine, if you find that a client who was shut down now is going into sympathetic, if a client that was depressed, dissociated, shut down is going into fight, flight, anxiety, panic, it could very well be that his nervous system is healing. Because what we do is we go up the ladder, usually. We go up the ladder. Now, I mentioned that we thought there was only two responses, basically parasympathetic and sympathetic. But Stephen Porges discovered that there's a third, vagal ventral, which is located in the midbrain. It comes right down here. If you want to know where the vagal goes, everybody touch their cheek, and then touch your throat, thorax, right, gut. I won't have you touch anymore, but it goes all the way down, all the way down. The dorsal starts in the back brain and goes down the spine. So there's branches, and the third branch is the ventral vagal. And the ventral vagal, when that's activated, one feels safe, one feels social. And when clients realize that it is possible to go from these nervous states to ventral vagal, when therapists realize that and how to get them there, I mean, many of you are doing this already. Mindfulness, yoga, meditation, dance, singing, movement, even splashing water on your face. Not that I think you should do that, but I have done that with clients, taking them in to the restroom, if they're a woman, you know, I go with them, and having them splash just some water to get them out of these stuck states. Now we know that sympathetic is fear, anxiety, panic. Parasympathetic, dorsal vagal is extreme danger, hopeless, I give up. And by the way, shame usually is a dorsal shutdown. When somebody really is in the throes of shame, they are shut down. And their voice is monotone. And they don't make eye contact. But it is possible that we can move people from shutdown to sympathetic, and from sympathetic to the ventral vagal, to social engagement. And we do that, and I'll show you how, some ways we do that in a minute. And ventral vagal, of course, when people are relaxed, when they're aware of their bodies, when there is some kind of beginning of social engagement, that's when we know they're in that top ladder of their nervous system. And we can help clients get there by watching our tone, mirroring facial expression, helping them through exercises of movement and music, etc. You know, and identifying these states for them. I do private counseling in Minneapolis, and that's where I live, Minneapolis, Minnesota. So somebody's got to work in it. It had to be me, but never mind. Way up northern United States. In my office, I have a parasympathetic corner, I have a sympathetic corner, and I have a ventral vagal corner. The sympathetic corner has all kinds of toys and activities. The parasympathetic and ventral I've decorated appropriately. They're just little tiny corners, so when my trauma clients come in, they place themselves in terms of where they are. Because these nervous system, these responses They have to know they are not in control of them. However, they can reach out and get out of them through social engagement. Let me show you, I put this on too. It's kind of like the Goldilocks continuum. This is too much, fight or flight, not enough, just right. That's how kind of I describe it. And I'm going to show you this slide, but and these slides will be on the internet. So if you want, yeah, they will be. They'll all be on the internet. Stimulating the ventral vagus, stimulating that well-being, all these things. Nasal sounds, I know it sounds ridiculous, but go on. Can everybody go, nee, nee, right. Nee. It stimulates the mastoid nerve, which also stimulates the inner ear and vagus nerve. Social interactions, yoga, particularly downward dog and cat-cow, I'm not going to do it for you, but if you want to stay after, I will. Breathwork, play, laughter, meditation, probiotics, according to Seated Porges. Probiotics amplify the effects. Exercise, particularly long walks, calming exercises, lying on the right side and breathing deeply. Acupressure or acupuncture, I've done lectures on tapping before, very, very helpful. Sunlight, minerals of potassium, sodium, magnesium, and vocalizations. And so let me just say one more thing about this. I mean, this could be an all-day workshop, and I'd love to talk about it. Vocalization and tone. I'm going to just switch this. I ask clients to create a list of words or sounds and practice them in their autonomic states. So let's take the word, just the burst of ah. Everybody say ah. Ah. If you were in a shutdown mode, how would you say ah? Ah. If you were in a sympathetic gas, how would you say it? Ah! If you were in ventral vagal, how would you say it? Ah! Practicing just those different tones, giving them a feel, because every time you do that, ask them to check in with their bodies. Different sounds, different tones. Experiment with speaking statements in different tones. Experimenting with the different nervous system. Experimenting with sympathetic pairs, like, I'm fine. Or, I'm fine. I'm fine. Simple vocalizations is just one clue to help people on that road. Speaking in tones, using different animal. If somebody is speaking like this, and they're just a little shut down, I ask them what their favorite animal is. So if I asked you, let's say, if I asked you, how are you doing today? Speak like a rabbit and tell me how you're doing today.
I'm very...
And what's your favorite large animal? A dog? A big dog or a little dog? Medium dog. So if I asked a medium dog, use a medium dog voice, tell me how you are today.
I'm feeling really solid and good.
Well, I want your dog. Have them experiment. What's your favorite large animal? If you could vocalize that in terms of a lion or tiger. Or what? I didn't hear you.
Purpose.
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 Porpoise.
Purpose.
I didn't understand. Somebody translate. Oh, well, I can't. Come up after me because I don't understand what you're saying. I'm sorry. It's my American ears. It's not your fault. Oh, all right. So everybody grab, put your hand like this. Put your nails out. And let's claw with the sound. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Ah! Very simple. To get the energy going, right? Ah! So vocalization and tone. So what I'd like to show you here, before my time is done, yeah, I've got time, is using this theory when it comes to externalizing shame. Let me just say something about externalizing shame. All emotions are said to be what we call adaptive. Somatically, if you stay, we're encouraged to stay with the sadness or stay with the anxiety, stay with it, because it will inform you about something deeper. If you're in fear, it may mean that you're in danger somehow. It might mean that. If you're sad, it could be grief, it could be what are you mourning. And the same with anger, really. They're adaptive. Shame is the exception. Shame is maladaptive. Shame has no adaptive purpose, and we do not want to deepen it. It's the one emotion that we want to expunge or let go of and not go deeper. We want to externalize it, and sometimes, folks, traditional talk therapy just doesn't do it. It just doesn't do it. So how many have heard of internal family systems? Okay, yeah, great. Richard Schwartz, which is a great way for people to visualize their shame, to be able to talk to the shame rather than internalize it. In other words, we want to be able to separate the shame from the precious being that experienced it. And so I'm going to do a little bit of a role play here to show you how this works. I'd like a volunteer. Invite a volunteer, somebody who learns best by doing and not sitting, to come and play with me a little bit. Anybody interested? Yeah, come on. Anybody? Come on up. That's great. You brave soul. Okay. All right. So we're going to do this. All right, and you are?
Andrea.
Andrea. Hi, Andrea. Give her a hand for coming up. That's very brave. So, Andrea, I'm going to put you in a little role play, if that's okay. Is that all right? All right. And it's going to be called a parts party. A parts party. And in this parts party, I'm going to ask you, we're going to put 4 individuals in the audience. In internal family systems, there's usually an exiler, there's a punisher, but we're going to have 4 individuals that exemplify maybe what goes on in your head. You okay with that? All right. And if at any time you want to stop, just say stop. Okay. So I would let's choose 4 people. We need 4 people up here who can help her out. Yeah, just come on up. Here, I'm going to have you stand over here, because they're going to sit in these chairs. We got 1. She needs a drink before we start. I don't blame you. All right. Okay, but you're going to have to move from that chair, because somebody's going to sit there. Okay. There we go. Okay, come on over, and you probably want to put the glass down. All right, so let's turn the name tag around so everybody can see what it is. All right, so this is going to be your committee. All right, so let's say you have a decision to make. Why, is that true? Oh, good.
Really bad decision.
Yeah. I think you're among friends here. Anybody else bad at decisions? Yeah. Okay. So you have a decision to make, and it could be a car you want to buy. Mm-hmm. It could be a relationship that you're thinking of breaking up. Could be anything. All right. I wouldn't go with the most traumatic right now. So when you have a decision to make, we're going to identify the voices in your head. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. So we need kind of a shame put down voice in here. Do you have one?
A shame put down voice.
Yeah, kind of a put down voice, like that criticizes you.
Oh, no.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I thought I was talking about a voice to put down the shame, but no, okay.
Well, that'll come too.
Okay.
And choose somebody to be that voice. That one. Okay, come on over here. And you willing to do it? Yeah. All right. There's an echo here. So he represents that voice. Okay. So give him a couple lines of what you say to yourself. Oh, you.
Okay. You never make the right decisions. You're going to mess this up.
That's good. And then you can extrapolate from there. Okay. So come on over here. So, in your head, do you have a voice that tells you, I can tell you for me, you can have a voice that tells you there's not enough, there's not going to be enough,
You're not enough.
you're not enough. Okay, so that can kind of go over there. Let's share that between you two, okay? You're not enough, there's not going to be enough, and yours is what again?
You're going to make the wrong decision.
Okay,
You're not going to make it,
you're going to make the wrong decision. So then we have this person here. So, what kind of positive assets do you have? Are you strong? Are you courageous? Are you creative?
Yeah. I am. Oh, this is excruciating. Okay. I think I am courageous.
Courageous, okay. So what message does this courage give you?
It's hard to access it, but okay, you're courageous. You show up.
You show up.
Yeah. And okay, so my courage.
That's good.
Yeah.
We can go with that. So you show up, you always show up, you do this, okay, and yours is?
You're not enough. It's not enough.
Okay. And you're not enough. You're going to be more in shutdown mode, okay? But you're going to speak up.
You're going to make the wrong decision. You're going to make the wrong decision. You're going to make the wrong decision.
Yeah, that's good.
I think that was, what was the other one? You're going to mess it up.
Courage, you can do this. You've totally got this. You're so brave. You take risks. You're right out there. You can do this.
So we can go with these three, or what else? Do you have another voice in your head? And I'm not talking about schizophrenia. You're not schizophrenic. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know what to do.
Okay. Paralyzed. Okay. Can you say that?
I don't know what to do.
Is it too much?
It's too much.
Okay. So this is a party.
Yeah.
Yeah. These are your guests. We'll get out of the way in a minute. These are your guests. It's almost like the doorbell rings. You let them in. It's a dinner party. So I want you to talk to each other. Okay. So since it's your party. You're going to go to them and say, I need to make a decision, and here's here's the decision, and you're going to let them talk amongst themselves, okay? So come on over here and welcome them to your party.
Hello, I'm glad you came. Trust you to be the first one to arrive. I've got to make a big decision, and I'd like you to help me. So. Hi, welcome. Yeah, I'm really glad you've turned up. And this time, stay a bit longer. And, oh.
You want to ignore her?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Do you know whatever we ignore takes great control over us? It does. But that's okay. It's your party. I'm just the MC. So here's what we're going to do. What's your decision? What's the decision you want to make?
Ooh. And make it up. To go on, to actually, there is whether to do a training course.
A training course on what?
On mindfulness.
Okay, he's already going. So I'm going to ask you to hold this. So everybody can speak.
Going to make the wrong decision on that.
Talk to each other.
You can do this. You can do this. You've always wanted to do this, and this is the time. You've got to do it now.
Not enough. Not enough.
No, this is the time. You can do
But
it.
I can't because I cannot.
brave.
But no,
You're so
no,
brave.
no, it's not
You're
possible.
going to
I'm
mess
not.
it up.
Brave.
Really, I don't know what
It's
to
the
do.
wrong
Maybe the right
decision.
time.
Don't do
Enough.
it.
I can do this.
You're not enough.
Find all this rubbish.
No, not enough. Not
How can I
enough.
do this? How can I do this? I'm like.
Don't do it, Andy.
No, do it.
Not enough.
Go ahead and do it. Let's go.
It's not possible. It's not possible.
You can totally do this.
You're not enough.
Listen to this. They're
You're not enough.
Does this look familiar? And if it doesn't, what would you can tweak this. What would you change here?
to make it
More realistic for you.
you be louder.
Shut up.
You just
Shut up.
probably be in a ball on the floor.
Okay. Shall I do it now?
Yeah, you might start off quite confident, and then you get sort of slowly.
So that's what happens.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take two. This is the last time we'll do it.
Okay.
Ready? Okay, I'm gonna take two. The decision is, should she take a course in mindfulness? Are you ready? Go.
Don't do it. You'll mess it up. It's the wrong decision.
You're not enough.
It's
You're
not.
not enough.
You're totally
Wrong.
going.
I booked the ticket, you're going.
Don't do it. Don't do it. It's wrong. Don't do it.
You're not enough.
time. This is your time. You're gonna
It's
do
not
it.
enough.
It's the wrong decision.
Yours or more? No.
Some great
No.
people.
Don't do it.
It's not enough. You're not enough. It's
You're
not.
detaching from your brain.
No, no,
Not
no.
enough.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Totally going. You're totally
Don't do it.
Don't listen to that
Rubbish.
song.
Thing to do.
You're not good enough.
Okay, so just you don't have to lay down, but just sit there for a minute. Come on. Yeah. So if you could tweak this, this voice down at the end there. How old?
My heart's beating so fast.
Oh God, I bet. You all right?
Yeah.
Okay. How long has that voice been with you?
Oh, forever.
Forever. Okay. So I'd like you to. This is your party, right? You can turn up the volume. You can turn down the volume. You can say whatever you want to say to these people, because this is yours. I'll give you. Yeah. Go.
Okay.
Who do you want to talk?
I need to talk to you. Okay, I don't need you as much anymore. You can quieten down quite a lot, and I don't put myself in such dangerous situations anymore, so I don't need you as much. Yeah.
Do you have? So that's been with you a long time. I'm going to ask you a very bizarre question, which I tend to do. Do you have any compassion for that part of you? Just very odd to ask. Because my hunch is that happened when you were little.
Yeah, I think I owe I've maybe had too much compassion for that part. Yeah.
You let it go on.
I think I always think it's my fault. So yeah, and no wonder I understand why you're doing what you're doing, because I'm this, that, and the other. So I think I've had maybe too much compassion for that part.
Okay. So it's not your fault. Is that what you said, or is it my fault?
Yeah. Well, I think I always think it's my fault. I know. When
That's
I'm,
not compassion.
No.
No, but it's confusing. It's confusing. So if I'm going to, we could go on with this, right?
Oh yeah.
But courage is here, and courage can really help you with this.
Yeah.
And can help you with her too. This one. This voice came a long, long time ago, and it was probably a little girl. We developed that voice because we don't get our needs met. Yeah. And this is actually a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
It was. It's like, screw you, I'm not going to, it's a survival mechanism for a lonely or powerless child. I don't know if I'm making that up for all the years I've known you, right? But I'll tell you, to tone down the volume, to have compassion, because compassion and shame cannot exist together. So it's not that it was my fault.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Come on over here. Is there anything else you want to say?
Thank you, firstly, for coming to my party, because you didn't have to. It's so hard to connect. I felt myself just shutting down. Now, what were you doing? You were sort of shut down. Okay, yeah. Okay. Sometimes that might feel true, but sometimes it's not true. Remember that. you have everything you need.
And anything you want to say to
Keep
courage?
going. Keep showing up, even though keep reminding me I need to see it.
Because you have this.
Mm-hmm.
This is part of you.
Mm-hmm.
This is all part of you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is your tapestry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? And what about, this is paralysis. Let me ask you,
Breathe.
how old is this?
3.
And what do you
It's
need?
better, actually. There's been some growth.
So what do you need to do as a 3-year-old who's paralyzed? Are you a mother?
Yeah.
What do you do as a 3-year-old who's just lost? If your 3-year-old was lost and just, what would you do?
Give him a hug. Give him a hug. Hear him.
Yeah.
Ask him how he feels.
That's exactly it. Can I have a hug?
So, you all right?
Yeah.
Okay. First off, I want you to give this crew a hand. And I'd like everybody to de-roll. Say, I'm not paralysis, I am.
I am not Paralysis, but I am.
You are who?
I am, I'm Isabel.
Hi, I'm not Courage, I'm Tay. I'm not enough, I'm Caroline.
I'm not a critical inner parent, I'm Jonathan.
Thank you. Thank you. And a big hand for Andrea, who is so
To trust myself, actually. About a year ago, someone said your internal family system is chaotic, out of whack, and that, still haven't addressed it. So the universe is going, do it. But I can. It's really good to see the progress there.
great.
Even though it probably doesn't seem like much. It used to be like frozen and couldn't talk, so I used to talk. So
You know, I wrote books on boundaries, and already I'm hugging and touching. I shouldn't do that, but I'm so admiring of you to come up here and do this. You had no idea what you were getting yourself into. But your courage brought you forward, and probably your intuition. Give her a hand, everybody. So, that was amazing, Andrea. Thank you. Thank you. So, I want to relate this back to the shame cycle. And when I talk about I call it the repetition cycle for a reason. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Laura. Okay. So the repetition cycle, here's how it works. Where's my little... Is it? Okay. See if I was tall enough, I'd see it. The repetition cycle. It starts with shame. And we go through the day, and if somebody has this overused word, toxic shame, or if they have shame that is repressed, not dealt with, through the day, what happens is they get a trigger. Something triggers. That trigger could be a compliment. It could be music playing. It could be a shopkeeper. It could be anything. But something triggers them into that feeling of defectiveness and worthlessness. What happens next is that you have to go through your day, so you start using defending strategies. And for many, the defending strategies can be grandiosity, it can be bullying, it can be really caustic, it can be trying to distract yourself in some way so you don't have to feel your body, so you don't have to feel what's going on inside. But gradually, after this kind of a scenario, you trigger, you use defenses, you might get home at the end of the day, or it might happen rather quickly, that you go into what's called alienation or disconnection. Disconnection from the self. Disconnection. It's a state where you are many times shut down and numb. And the disconnection, and you're not feeling very much. You're not feeling very much. Now, what happens next for many people is an acting out or an acting in. So let me give you an example. The acting in, by the way, is more of what you saw up here. It's the inner criticism, the inner critique. Some people go so far as to start cutting on themselves. They just cannot tolerate that dreadful feeling of shame. Acting out, I'll give you an example of that. So you were, let's say, you go through the day, something happens, you get triggered, you get disconnected, numb. So what do some people do? Well, so you gather your credit cards and you head to the mall. And at the mall, you just get very distracted and buy, and then you come home at the end of the day. You put all your purchases on your bed and you look at them. Or what can happen is you get out a pan of brownies and a fork and you start looking lovingly at that pan of brownies and you down the whole thing. How do you feel afterwards?
Shame.
What? Shame.
Self-loathing.
Yeah. Usually shame. Acting out often is about either compulsive behavior, and compulsive behavior, by the way, puts shame right back on the table where you can see it. It puts it right in your face. Whether it's shopping or eating or whatever that might be, gambling. There's a slight difference, and we can debate this, between compulsive behavior and addiction. Addiction doesn't necessarily bring you face to face with shame right away. If you're an addict and you start using as a result, it disconnects you even further. Compulsive behavior, that's not right. That's not correct. The other thing that people do in acting out is they rage at this point. Their anger just gets fueled. They rage. And they're raging and they're angry, but they're feeling again though. They're feeling. And that feeling, you start to recapture the emotion. You might start to calm down a little bit. But what happens is the self remains incomplete. All right, you've all had lunch, so I'm sorry to do this. If anyone's ever had food poisoning, do you know you get sick to your stomach, you throw up, but you still feel sick? Okay. If somebody has a rage or anger problem, you can take them to 1 million anger management classes. But unless they're willing to deal with shame, nothing's going to change. Nothing will change unless they deal with that component. There are various places to intervene on this cycle. So I'm going to ask you, where would you intervene? If you're a therapist, or if you know somebody who does this, where would you intervene? Any ideas? At the trigger? The problem is that triggers happen so quickly. The shame. So when people start feeling shame, is that what you're saying?
Where the shame is embedded, right back at the start, early childhood.
So you'd start there in therapy, that's correct. But if one of your clients is in this cycle, there's not one right answer. Some people can intervene when someone is raging. That's not what I do. The place that I found most powerful intervening, this is from Dr. Bruce Fisher that I've learned this, is this disconnection. This disconnection. When you work with someone and they're going into that dorsal shutdown, ask them, what are the signs that you're going there? What happens to you? Do you feel the void? Do you feel empty? Do you get tired? What happens? And the most powerful thing that they can do is reach out and make a connection. I ask people actually to call me. Now, I'm not always available, but they leave a long message on my voice machine. Whenever I do therapy with somebody, or even at Crossroads in our groups, we ask people, who knows? What are your nurturing networks out there? Who knows you're here? To be able to reach out for connection starts to repair that interpersonal bridge that's been severed long ago. So I develop a code word with my clients, a code word. So they don't have to tell me where they are, they just tell me what happened, how they're feeling right now. I can't always call them back, so I do encourage them to pick somebody out there. But if there's nobody out there, and they happen to be in a 12-step program, call your sponsor. Call somebody you know. And, you know, this is Brene Brown, and good old Pat Ogden, who says that the very best thing to do in the midst of a shame spiral, it's absolutely counterintuitive. It's the last thing you want to do, and it's the most reparative. And so that's what I encourage people to do. I set a contract based on that. And I'm just going to switch this just a minute. Should have come earlier, but it didn't. So we talked about internal family systems already. I just want to say this. I love this quote, that words, good ideas, and logic mean nothing to at least 2 brains out of the 3. Much of one's mind does not take orders, and according to Tom Gentry, the value of therapy, 25% technique and 75% therapeutic relationship. And so, and hope. So, I want to start to wind this down, and if you have questions, I will take them in just a couple minutes. You know, the idea, technique is so important. It really is important. You know, and I said this last year, no matter if it's EFT, ACT, DBT, ABCD, what really matters is how you show up in the room. Is how you show up in the room with someone. With your open heart, and you know, I want to show you this cartoon. We try the best we can. This is a doctor with a patient who says, of course I'm listening to your expressions of spiritual suffering. Don't you see me making eye contact, striking an open posture, leaning towards you and nodding empathically? So, we can't always be there 100% for somebody, but if you can't, take the time before you see people to breathe and get yourself connected again. Because I'm telling you, if a horse can tell that the person riding it is going to ride it into a wall, another human being can tell when you're not in the room with them. And that just encourages the interpersonal severing and the detachment. You know, some of our clients never felt at home, ever. They always felt like a stranger in their own families. Part of a recovery is getting a network so you can find your people. So you can really find your people and find people, you know, it's family of choice sometimes. Find people who you can dare to risk and show the soul of who you are. None of us want to leave this earth with nobody really knowing who we are. I don't anyway. And what we know, and I said this to Andrea up here, that with compassion, shame cannot exist. That's good old Brene Brown. Compassion, self-compassion, and shame cannot exist together. And I want to tell you this story that a couple years ago there was a woman at Crossroads who was alcoholic and dealing with a lifelong eating disorder. She started a mindfulness practice where she could begin to sit with her feelings, but she had a lot of shame and couldn't tolerate a mindfulness practice, which many people can't. sitting in silence right away. And she started writing once about a pivotal moment where, after running away from home as a teenager and being returned home by the police, she stood in front of her mother and asked, "Mother, do you love me?" And Mother looked at her and said, just very matter of fact, "How could anyone love you?" It wasn't new. Throughout her childhood, her mother filled her head with ugly critiques and messages, and it took a long time to heal. But even as a little girl, she realized that something was pulling her through, and she told us this, and it's a great story about compassion. She said, from the age of 5 or 6 until I was well into my teens, whenever I had trouble sleeping, I'd slip into the kitchen for a little bit of bread and cheese and bring it back with me. Then I'd pretend, she said, that my hands belonged to someone else. A comforting, reassuring being without a name, or even an angel, because she believed in angels. My right hand would feed me little bits of cheese and bread, and my left hand would stroke my face and my cheeks. My eyes closed, and I'd whisper softly to myself, there, go to sleep. You're safe now. Everything's going to be okay, and I love you. That practice pulled her through. And that act of self-compassion, she didn't call it compassion at the time. She understood that all the years underneath fixating for food, there was a part of her that was hungry, literally. Hungry for and longing for love. And her core belief was that there's nobody here to love me, I'll never be loved, and she felt anger, and of course underneath was the grief. No matter how deeply we've been wounded, ladies and gentlemen, when we listen to the inner voice that calls us back home, calls us to our bodies, to compassion, that's when we can begin our wholeness. And I'm going to end with this story, an old teaching story about, do I have time? Okay. It's the story of a grandmother, a very old sage, very wise, who had this beautiful little grandson. And the grandson went up to her one day and said, "Grandma, why are you so wise? How can you love so much?" And the grandma said, "Well, inside of me, there are 2 wolves. There's the wolf of hate and the wolf of love. And everything depends on which one I feed." Now, when I first heard that story, I said, of course, that's great. But then I started to think, wait a minute. What about that wolf of hate? You're just going to ignore it? What happens if we don't recognize it? What happens if we just feed the goodness and just pretend the other doesn't exist? The more unmet needs we have, the more our identity gets tied to that primitive wolf. Because shame and that kind of hatred and anger, it's all about unmet needs and severed attachment. Joseph Campbell used to say that there's a line with a circle, that anything below that on awareness, anything in that line below is out of our awareness, unseen, and therefore it takes great hold of us. So this is about releasing shame, but also understand that we develop that mechanism for a reason. We develop it for a reason. And it's not about ripping ourselves apart, because that just hijacks our limbic system. But it's to form a tapestry that works. To having compassion for that little girl or that little boy or that teenage girl or boy who struggled for connection. So I'm gonna, I've got many papers up here, but I'm gonna end with one of my favorite poems. And before I say that, therapists who are working with shame, we have to manage our own shame too, don't we? Because it's very, very triggering. And I can tell you a story about that where I almost lost it. You want to hear it? How many want to hear it? How many don't care anymore and just want to get up and leave? All right. So this is a story about a guy who came in my office one day, and a gay man who was very closeted, worked for a big corporation. And he presented himself very shy. And his partner just left him because he had talked about how he likes to cruise to bars and he doesn't get the attention he needs from home. And he couldn't understand why his partner kicked him out the third time he was doing this. As I was speaking to him, he kept looking at the clock. Because I was checking out the time, and then he would turn around and look at the clock. And I only did that once. And he turned to me and said, "Am I boring you, Rokelle?" Really, if I'm boring you, to be honest, you were third on the list of therapists. I swear to God, you were third on the list. So I can find someone else. No. Really acutely aware of my momentary inattention to him. It triggered all kinds of shame and anger. So gradually he came back. He went out the night cruising again, and I started to articulate his shame for him because he couldn't do it. And I commented on the deep sense of self-hatred he must have felt, to have felt so gratified by these fleeting contacts with people. And gradually he said, yep, for a brief time, I could forget how unlovable I am. So we acknowledged that. Very quickly, our relationship improved, and all of a sudden I became the best therapist in town. To the point where he called me one day. He wanted me to take me to lunch, introduce me to his friends. He had set up this luncheon. And I said to him, I don't do that. That's for your protection. He hung up on me, and I knew it was coming. The next day, we had a session. He started... And he said to me, he stopped me, he said, "Rokelle, how can you walk around like that? Do I not pay you enough so you can get a decent manicure?" Calm from mother's voice. He said, when we're done, I would suggest you go get that taken care of because it's quite ugly. It's quite ugly, and to be honest, it's distracting. So, shame. I had a lunch break after that. Guess where I went? And I called my supervisor. And what I wanted to say to him is, don't ever talk about my nails to me again. But what I should have asked is, why is that so important to you? What's going on inside of you that makes you just so distractible with my nails? But no, I didn't. And he was projecting his shame on me, and I would just say, we gotta really watch our own shame and take time out, breathe, and be honest too. So I'm gonna end right now. Mary Oliver's The Journey, which goes, one day you knew what you had to do and began. Though the whole house trembled and the mad voices in your head were screaming their bad advice, and you felt the old familiar tug at your ankles, the melancholy, the shame was terrible. But you didn't stop. You didn't stop because it was already late. With the wind howling and the path covered with frozen branches and stones, but little by little, as you left those voices behind, there was a new voice. There was a new voice that you gradually started to recognize as your own, that kept you company. As you strode deeper and deeper into your life, determined to do the only thing you could do. Determined to save the only life you could save. One day you knew what you had to do and began. Thank you very much for sitting so long.